sports consultant and mentor. Today's conversation is about probably one of my most favorite things to do with athletes. It is my secret sauce. It's how my program is able to grow the way that it's growing. It's the secret sauce, so to speak. It's communication, right? I majored in communication, and not saying I'm perfect. I just studied communication, understood what communication does and doesn't do. I understand nonverbal communication. I was able to just apply a lot of these concepts and play around with a lot of these perspectives and philosophies as I went through my coaching journey. And so over these 20 seasons of coaching, I've been able to see what works, see what doesn't work, see what works for certain athletes, and et cetera. And the secret towards communication is knowing your athletes. When you know them, there's a trust level that is built up. And that trust level that's built up allows you to coach better for that to that athlete, or allows you to coach that athlete better, and also allows the athlete to receive what you're saying in a more constructive way. So this is the second part. The first part was all about, the words you use. This is about how you connect with the athletes. So let's start here. Understanding where these kids are coming from. Okay. I worked at a private school. And so when I was coaching there, I had private school issues, right? The kids it was a range of kids, right? I had kids that had a bunch of money, kids that never seen a dollar in their life, right? It was a huge range, but on average, it was kids that had opportunities and were given opportunities and just had a little bit easier when it came down to um, certain level expectations, right? Didn't have that many athletes that needed to work. Didn't have that many athletes that didn't have transportation or didn't have food, right? I came from that area. However, this school was just a little bit different. So our issues were a little bit different, right? Even athletes that would say, I could say you need new spikes, and they would have new spikes the next day, right? Big range of athletes. And so it doesn't mean that they're better or worse than anyone else. It just means that I have to now approach my coaching differently. And so what I realized was when I would sit down and talk to the athletes would open up and tell me what's going on in their life. Now, obviously, I might feel like you're telling me that your phone battery died and that's the worst thing ever in your life, and you had to go to the store and buy a battery pack. Like, it doesn't make any sense. However, I got to put things in perspective. What if that's their most traumatic experience? If it is, then I have to think about, well, what is my most traumatic experience? How did I feel when I was dealing with my most traumatic experience? This is their most traumatic experience. I I understand how they're feeling. Your experiences as an adult to a teenager's experience, it's like, why are you focused on that? What are you doing? It's not even important. However, the reality is when you understand them and you know them and you see that that's their biggest trauma ever, well, then you can't compare the situation. You must compare the emotion, right? What did I feel like when I was going through my most traumatic experience? Did I want to compete? Did I want to smile? Like, all these things are very important, right? So this past weekend, both of my athletes at New Balance, not New Balance, Nike. Um, One did really well. The other one didn't meet her expectations, right? So with Pops, he jumped 15:10, 15:9, something like that. And he's a middle schooler. And his personal best is 16:2. So he was within the range of his PR, didn't jump as far as he wanted to. But then we looked at last year's performance. He jumped 13 something, right? So the fact that he jumped 2 feet better this year at the same meet lets you know that he's really improving, right? And he's also starting season. So last year he started season at 13 something, ended at 16. This year he's starting at 15.9. So he's on pace for 17, right? Or higher. So as I'm telling him this, I'm letting him know that you're in a great place. Like the kids that were jumping were already growing facial hair. They had underarm hair. Like they were already grown, and you're still a seventh grader. You have another year to improve just in middle school. So he didn't want to hear that. I took pictures of him at the meet, and he was just like, right. So he just had high expectations of himself, as he should, but is dealing with it in a certain way. And I let him go through his emotions. Why? Because how would I feel if I was at a national event and I performed shy of what I expected? Me being competitive, I'd be upset. I'd be disappointed, right? So I said to myself, what would I need during that time? And for me personally, get out of my face. I don't want a pep talk. I don't want you to talk to me. I just want to be by myself for a second to deal with my emotions. So I told him that. I said, hey, you did a good job. This is where we're at. And as I'm talking to him, I'm looking at him. And I was like, he does not want me to talk to him. So what did I do? I said, you know what? I'm proud of you. Take your time. That was it. And I let him go, right? He gets to go through his emotions on his own. And why was I aware of this? Because I've talked to him. I've seen him win. I've seen him lose. I understand his challenges. He comes from a family of 9, right? He's in the middle. So he also has an older brother that's doing really well. There's a lot of expectations in the family because they're so competitive, right? Like his other sisters have gone to that meet and have gotten on the podium. Like he wanted to come home with a medal. He wanted to come home with a plethora of pictures of him on that podium because as of right now, his sister has been the most decorated. And so he wants to be a part of that community, right? He wants to come home and have bragging rights. So there's a lot of pressure there. And because I understand that, because I've talked to him, because I understand who he is as a person. And he's expressed, not those exact points, but he's expressed how he feels and what's going on. I was able to coach him in the way that he feels is the best for him. And giving him space was exactly it. Right. And so now we're going to work on another aspect of, how to deal with the emotions during the track meet. But overall, he did a great job. Right. And the competitive side of me is, why didn't you perform at your best? It's nationals. You're supposed to be at your best. There's only one national champion per division. And that means there's only one person that's actually doing what they want to do and doing exactly what they set out to do. Why weren't you that person? Right. So these conversations are very important to have, but just not in the moment. You got to read the room. Right. Um, and so with my other athlete, Kara, she was the opposite. She was like, yeah, I felt really flat. The pressure got to me, like was very open about how she felt. But on the flip side, because I know her and we talk, I was able to gauge that she was wearing a mask. She was wearing a mask of smiling and like, I know I can do it. I'm okay. The reality is she's not. She's not, right? Because she's just like me. I will smile through the most troubling times. And the reason why is because I found out through my childhood that when I smile through my hard times, no one ever asked me, am I okay? So I don't have to then tell them yes or no. I just smile, everything's always good, right? Later on in life, I realized that that wasn't good because I was holding on to emotions, right? However, in her situation, I can see that she's doing that. And I've expressed to her about that, right? But the thing is, again, that moment wasn't the right moment to talk to her about it. there's other times. So now this week during practice, or we'll have a phone call where we'll just talk, right? I may not talk specifically about that topic, but I'll just talk to her about her emotions, how she feels, and get a real good feel for what's going on. Then once I have that, then I get to be vulnerable and let her know about how I am feeling and how I have dealt with certain situations. And then that's going to create more rapport between her and I, right? So I'm using these examples to remind you as a coach to spend time with athletes. What I'll do is when athletes are warming up, there's a portion in the warm ups where um, they're like walking, doing some of their exercises. While they're walking, I'll go up to them and ask them how they're doing. I'll ask them how the performance was, right? You might see on my social media that these kids are ranked in the nation, ranked here and there, and they didn't PR, but they're getting better. Maybe they are understanding of a certain drill. Maybe they just had a good weekend, right? Maybe they went on a vacation somewhere. Whatever it is, asking them these questions makes them feel just as important as the kids that are hitting these accolades, right? I realized that when I asked an athlete, like, how was your weekend? And they said, oh, it was okay. I'm like, what'd you do? Like, oh, I just stayed at home and I painted. I'm like, oh, wow, what'd you paint? And then that conversation goes. Now they have this memory, even though it was maybe 3 minutes of a conversation. Those 3 minutes could have been the only 3 minutes that they talked about themselves to an adult in the week, right? Like, we have no idea what's going on at home unless you ask. We have no idea if your coaching is doing well unless you ask. There's an athlete that I have, I won't say the school or name, but basically, this athlete was feeling a certain way about this athlete's coaching. I'll keep it very vague. And this athlete is at a big name university. And the university's policy, or maybe the coach's perspective, is I don't want to change the athlete's form once they get to this school. And I had made an adjustment on the athlete's form when they came back during the summer. And I was like, there's something going on here. The athlete had just finished season. And so I said, let's change this form and work on it while we're still in jump shape. We have, 2 to 3 weeks to work on this. We worked on it. It changed. The athlete showed up to the school. The coach said, I don't like that, or take that back. The coach did not say that. The coach said, I don't know how to coach that style of jump. And then asked the athlete to revert back to the previous form. And that athlete has yet to improve the athlete's performance. I'm being very careful. The whole time in college. And so my thing is, like, it's unfortunate, right? Because I know that the coach cares about the athletes and the coach wants the athletes to improve. And then the athlete is like, well, I came here with the expectation to do better because I went from high school to college level coaching. I should expect a change, and there wasn't, right? Now, yes, there are other variables such as, food, experiences, all that stuff. At the end of the day, when it comes down to business, did the athlete improve? Did the coach help the athlete improve? If the answer is no, well, then that's it. No, there's no improvement. So the part that's frustrating is when I spoke to the coach then said, I always ask the athletes what's going on, how they feel, which was good. The problem was the athlete didn't feel comfortable enough to tell that coach, but the athlete told me candidly exactly what was going on. And I asked the athlete, well, why aren't you telling the coach this? And also, are there any times where you're able to communicate with the coach? The athlete said, yes, once a year after season. There's a sit down to recap the season. And so while I talked to the coach, I asked the coach, do you ever talk to the athletes? Like, do you know what they're going through in their life? And the coach said, yes. But I said, but really, like, dive into it. Did you know that the athlete had a breakup? Right. And after that breakup, there was an injury. there was a stress that was happening emotionally, and the injury followed that, the physical injury. The coach said, I didn't know about that. Well, I did. And so it's important to continue to build your relationship with these athletes on and off the track, right? Because maybe that athlete didn't have the support system that was needed, and then now had to do a very stressful workout. And that stress just added on. Then the body said, I can't do it right now, right? And the coach confirmed that at the end of the year, there's a recap of the season. And I asked, do you ever ask how you're doing as a coach? The answer was no. And there was a moment of reflection there. And then the other question was, okay, so when you ask, wasn't a question, it was more of a comment, but when you ask an athlete, like, let's talk about your season and how it went, I said, that's very tough, because now if you're dealing with something, you got to hold on to it the whole season. How does that benefit a program if you could only talk to the coach once per year? What if there was a conversation once a week, or maybe twice a month? Like, what would that look like for your program if the athletes could either anonymously or in person tell you exactly how they feel? Most cases, kids aren't going to tell you exactly how they feel. It's just, we're adults, right? But if we had some type of space that was safe, that the athletes could either speak anonymously or express how they feel, or even if one athlete has the audacity to say how he or she feels, take it as, do all the kids think this way? Right? If an athlete tells you, coach, this is missing, then it's important to follow up that question with, do you know if anyone else feels this way? Because if anyone else does, you don't need to know who it is. You can just reflect on, do I feel that I'm giving exactly what's needed to these athletes? If I feel that I am, well, then let me dive into this feeling that I have and ask the athletes, is the way that I'm giving the coaching benefiting them? It's very important for us as coaches to communicate with the athletes. You can do it in a team setting or an individual setting. With my virtual team, because it's virtual, I'm on the phone physically with them. I allocate time to each and every single virtual athlete, and I talk to them each week. We talk about what's working, what's not working, how we can adjust. The kids are actually involved in the program development piece. Some coaches don't like that they're a part of my virtual program, and we figure it out. And what it does is it creates separation and division if the coaches don't like what's being either said or suggested, um, because the coach may have his or her program that is set. The, the, the issue is the kids coming to me because something's missing. And so whatever is missing, I got to figure out what that is and then provide a solution. If the kid says, I'm not running fast enough, I can't give the athlete running workouts. It doesn't make any sense, right? But I can say, here are some things in your form that you can adjust while you're running, right? Here are some technical flaws you have and here are some drills you can do to support that. But it can't just be do these workouts, right? It requires that conversation, but the division happens when the coach says no, or we're doing this, and then I'm saying something different. And I understand that it's a conflict of interest for the coach because now you have inconsistent results. But the reality is, self reflect, look at what results you're getting and simply ask the athlete, what's missing? Like, what am I falling short on? And then once you get that information, if they're with my virtual team or whatnot, they're going to express exactly what's missing because now they can see it, right? Because they went out and they paid physical money to receive the additional services. I understand that my program doesn't have the fastest athletes. We don't have that much focus on sprints, right? Now we have sprinters that are doing well. However, overall, my team is very confident. My team is strong, durable. They're just educated athletes that know exactly what they want. And we are also lacking in the areas of speed, um, middle distance. Uh, some could say landing. We don't land well. Like there are so many areas, but I have to balance and say, okay, this is what we're focused on, right? But the athletes understand that. I tell them that from the very beginning. I ask them, okay, what do you feel like you're missing? They say, I'm missing these three things. Great, let's work on these things. It's just adding things together. So again, at the end of the day, this whole thing comes down to conversations. When you communicate with their athletes, you're going to find the rapport and trust just elevate through the roof. You're going to find that your program is going to be that much smoother. I know that I don't communicate as well as to the parents as much. I'm still working on that aspect of getting everyone on the same page. But at the end of the day, I feel that my relationship with the athletes is huge. And I really focus on that. And the results that we've had on the track has been because they feel safe in our program. I literally have athletes driving an hour and a half to practice because they want to be in the space that I've created for them. And it's for them because they let me know what they need. So continue to ask the athletes what they're looking for, self-reflect as a coach, and I promise you your team will do that much better this coming season or this season now that we're in. All right.